Manhattan Community Board 1's Transportation and Street Activity Permit Committee for March of 2022. I'm Betty Kay, the chair of the committee. I'm accompanied by two co-chairs at this time, Jess Coleman and Michael Francoeur.
No worries.
I know. And our district manager, Lucian Reynolds. There's a short agenda tonight. If you want to go to the next slide, and Michael's sharing his screen. The Omni Fair person, we found out they're also being redistricted, just as Battery Park City is. And the proposed speaker is actually going to be running for the state senate. So that item is being postponed for another month. As far as the DOT updates, nobody from the DOT has showed up, so we can kind of skip that item as well. Yes, we can do, so we can really start with, so Charlie, you can make this your happy moment. We'll actually start with the civilian enforcement of illegal parking, and that law as it was proposed even included those with placards, as well as city vehicles. And if you go to the next one, and this is going to be a discussion, I'll do a little bit of review of what the original legislation was. It was, as you can see here, introduced as Bill 2159. It was introduced in 2020. It was first introduced in November of that year. In December, it was sort of taken off at the end of the agenda and not reintroduced in 2021. So the issue here is looking at it and deciding how do we want to move forward, because it looks like this whole thing has been dropped. It appears, and Lucian, correct me if I'm wrong, that the mayor at the time was not interested in pursuing it.
That's my understanding, that's right.
Right, and City Council decided not to do anything about it since really most of them were timing out anyway at the end of 2021. So the question is, do we want to move forward with asking our current people to do something with it and or any changes? Given that the title of the original law, which, Lucian, do you know, can they even reintroduce it, or do they have to create a whole new bill at this time?
No, they can reintroduce it. Absolutely, just take whatever's out there last time and just pop it in. And I can't remember what the priority is for who gets to. I think if whoever was a sponsor of it last session can be the one who introduces it. But yeah, all the bills that didn't make it last session can just be reintroduced pretty quickly.
Okay. Because the original sponsors are mostly no longer in the City Council.
Betty, can I ask you a question about, I just want to be, before I opine, I know that it has to do with the placards. Was this also that anybody, any citizen, if they see a car that's at an expired meter or double parked or anything, can turn on another citizen and report them and get a possible, whatchamacallit?
It was 25% of the fine that was collected.
Right, so let me know what, like, I have an opinion about that. So if I can say it, or do you want to wait for?
No, why don't you wait to find out? Because this law is limited. It's not just anybody like an expired meter.
No, right. But I'm saying it's both for placards and for non-placards, correct? And it gives a money incentive for
Correct.
somebody to walk the streets to basically turn somebody else in. Is that basically the general thing?
It could be that. I mean, some people with the idling did appear to be making money from it.
Right. So
it could be that there's something that really bothers them, such as an obstruction of their bus, an obstruction of their bicycle.
Right. So the
it's
thing
a
is,
one-off.
okay. So when it comes to the city placards, personally, I would have no problem, because that's like a government, like, like it's like reporting a bad cop, reporting a bad something like a state, somebody like, something against the government, something against an official thing. I could see a safety issue. I don't like in principle, even though they're technically correct, if, like pitting a citizen against another citizen. I find that's a really opening a can of worms even if the citizen reporting is correct about what they're reporting. I could see some, whether it's young people or other people trying to make some extra bucks, or homeless people trying to make some extra bucks, and then somebody, I'm just speaking practically now in what really could happen, and then somebody comes out to their car and they see somebody writing down their license plate number, like reporting them to the authorities, and a civilian, and I could see some bad things possibly happening in a violent way between somebody that's doesn't want to get like turned in by another citizen, and when there's a monetary incentive of citizen to citizen, I have a big problem with that, even if the citizen turning them in is correct technically. So I would be, if it's citizen, if it includes just regular civilian, like vehicles or anything, even if the vehicle is doing something wrong, I would be against it, especially because of the monetary incentive. And I think that could lead to some violence.
Okay, well, let's move on with this, and then that's obviously a point for the discussion. So that
And then if we could, is it possible to maybe separate the two between the placards, reporting the placards, and reporting, civilian to civilian?
That would be a city council issue.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide. Yeah, just a summary of it. This would create a new violation and civil penalty for hazardous obstruction of a vehicle, very specifically of a bicycle lane, a bus lane, when bus lane restrictions are in effect, the sidewalk, a crosswalk, or a fire hydrant. And it has to be within a radial distance of 1,320 feet of a school building entrance or exit.
Right. See, Betty, unfortunately.
One second, Mitch.
I'm sorry, Betty. I'm sorry.
And this is one where Lucian, if you recall those from 2020, actually looked at our district, and it really, using this restriction, covered really our whole district, Community District 1 in Manhattan, except for a little bit of northwestern Tribeca, which there were areas that were not within this distance of a school. It does impose legislation of $175 penalty. They are processed directly through the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, which is one of the positives in that it does not go through the police department at all. It's very automated. And it also authorizes, the big thing is for the DOT to set up the rules for what is needed to document this violation, as well as how to submit it and the website to allow that to be done. So again, like everything else, the rules have to be set by various agencies. The laws merely designate who is going to set up the rules, not the rules per se, just the general guidelines. If you go to the next one, I don't think there is anything else. Yeah, so the question is, should we do anything? And Mitch has started the discussion. He's concerned about violence. Although I want to tell you that the mayor also put forward, if you remember, the idling of buses and trucks. And he had Billy Idol doing commercials, and they preceded this law. There were no incidences of violences. And in that case, you had to film at least 3 minutes.
That's a different situation.
Exactly, because there it took a lot longer to do it. And if you look at online at placard abuse and those, there are photos taken every day.
Not against that. They're mixing two things up where there could be some possible bad situations. The other thing, and the only reason why I'm not on my computer on my phone, so some of the things are hard for me to read. So I'm going by what you were just saying. Like in our neighborhood, a few blocks, like where there are bike lanes, like on side streets, and I'm not saying there shouldn't be, but I'm just saying there are bike lanes on side streets right in front of like regular apartment buildings. And I see people dropping off, whether it's in rain or with packages or with small children, having to drop off in front of their building for like 20, 30 seconds. And there's only one lane, so they have to pull over into the bike lane, or else it's dangerous. You can't like take your kid out the traffic side of the car. You have to take them out the street side of the car. So, there are so many situations that come up where people have to be more understanding, along with the bike riders and the cars. There has to be some flexibility, because there are situations that come up where it can't just be a black and white zero tolerance on both sides. Because
Thank you. Let me get somebody else to speak. First of all, since it looks like the community board host, Lucian, usually you just have something illuminating to say.
well, you didn't say how you felt about what I just said.
My thoughts don't particularly matter.
Okay, I wouldn't say that, but thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Just for background, the community board one, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm coming down on either side of this, but just community board one is on the record of being opposed to the misuse of city placards, to the proliferation of agency authorized parking, picking up all of the curb lane space, preventing other types of resident oriented parking or loading zones, resident loading zones, commercial loading zones, from being able to be applied in those areas to allow access to the curb, whether temporary or for extended period of time. And furthermore, where these things do exist, they only exist on paper because in Lower Manhattan, they're immediately taken not only by city employees, but by people who are impersonating city employees with fake placards, counterfeit placards, borrowed real placards. And so it is a very large problem that prohibits a sane strategy and policy from being applied to our district. So, I think that I think we're operating kind of in a distorted atmosphere right now, because even if we did have the right tools available to us with a magic wand, they would instantly be filled with people who are parking illegally in these new tools that we have in the toolkit, such as residential parking zones or residential loading zones. If there were to be a policy for residents to have permits for certain areas, that would be immediately disrespected by those with placards. So I really urge the committee to kind of think about if we had a magic wand and all of the types of curbside regulations that we would like to see applied could be applied, would our parking system, transportation system, for hire vehicle, transport, accessor ride, would it work better? And we wouldn't have to kind of work under these kind of more distorted dynamics. That's all I have, Betty.
Thank you. And yes, in that vein as well, this particular law, 2159, was supported in a CB1 resolution in December of 2020, overwhelmingly. So that also has to be kept in mind in terms of precedent. Michael?
Yeah, thanks,
And then
Betty.
Eric?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I remember our discussion back in 2020, and like I think everything that Lucian just said came up during that discussion, and I think Mitch makes a good point. I would add just that the reason a lot of times that cars need to pull over or double park in bike lanes or whatnot is because there's so much placard parking, illegal placard parking, because we live in the community. All of the curbside parking regulations and signs, we're in like a law-free zone, and we've ever since I've been on the board, we've been begging anyone in the municipal government to do anything about it, and this it seems like kind of a logical like next step to that, given that it's been a futile it's been futile trying to get the government to do anything. So this is a logical next step, which is, hey, if the government's not going to do anything, can you let us enforce the law? And so yeah, I think like De Blasio and the DOT set the precedent when they put in place a very similar program that's targeted at idling cars. So it makes sense to me, like why not expand that to other types of violations, especially given that blocking a bike lane, blocking a bus lane, blocking a sidewalk has pretty severe safety implications for pedestrians, cyclists, and even motorists. and it really prevents the logical flow of traffic. I think the next step here would be, I don't know if you're thinking that we need a resolution, or if it's as simple as is there a way to forward this old resolution to our new city council member to ask if he would be interested in sponsoring or reintroducing this legislation. So
I've read the resolution, and in fact, we would be better served to rewrite it. With
okay.
the other attached to it, just because of the
Mhm.
way the words fall. The question is that I have for you, based on what you said, are you going for just placards and city-owned vehicles, or do you agree with all vehicles, which is what the original legislation was?
Yeah, I agree with all vehicles. I think in our district specifically, this will be a fantastic tool against placard parking, but there's no reason, in my view, to limit it just to placard parking if any vehicle could create a similarly dangerous situation.
Can I ask Michael a question, Betty?
Sure, and then Eric.
Okay, Michael, like I said,
Mhm.
if I agree with you on the placard and the city-owned vehicles, in a situation that I see all the time where there's placards parked on the parking in the parking lane, and so a mother has to drop off her child, and just like get out of the car for a second, walk it to the apartment or the doorman, and get back in the car, and then somebody's just waiting there to snap the photo so that they can make 25% of $175, and then I mean it's like those situations are going to happen, and it's that's where I find like the injustice of combining both the civilians with the placards. And like I said, I want the safety for everybody, but there's some things where you have no choice but to drop somebody off, and you can't drop them off in the middle of the street. So everybody has to just be a little patient. So I mean, you feel that somebody can just take like document somebody, they're dropping off their kids like in front of their apartment, and they have no other choice but to do it for a few seconds in the bike lane, and they should get penalized because somebody's like standing there waiting to document that.
Yeah, I think
No.
there's two things there. Like, I guess my main thing is, I think that, again, the reason why a lot of this stuff happens is because there's placard cars parked in the zone. Like, we can't
Agreed.
or if we wanted to go to DOT to get a residential like loading zone, we could do that, but we know it would just be filled with placard parking.
Right.
So in order to get that residential loading zone, I think we need some tool to resolve the placard parking. And I do hear you. It doesn't sound like it's too much when a car's parked in a bike lane for 20 or 30 seconds. But I do know. I mean, having like cycled around, it only takes 20 or 30 seconds. If someone pulls into the bike lane ahead of me, a cyclist, I have to swerve into the
No, I
traffic
agree with
lane
you on
pretty
that.
quickly. So it
I agree with you on that.
can create some dangerous situations. And I think ultimately, I don't know, safety over convenience, unfortunately.
Well,
But
well,
I hear you. I get that.
It's there's also safety of I would never have my children like get out the passenger side of the car on a one-lane street. And I agree with you that the placard situation, I guess it's which came for what are we going to get, the chicken or the egg? And I would say that the placard situation needs to be resolved, if ever, before we can implement some of these other smart things that are being brought up. That's where my point.
No, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, no, he's correct, because curb access is the real issue. And I can tell you, excessive ride, I always get dropped off in the street. So as far as children, why doesn't mom stop in the moving lane of traffic and let the child out if bike lane is an option?
Okay,
Why are they choosing the bike lane instead of the car lane?
Betty, there's one on some of the side streets around here. There's one lane, and because there's placards are parked on both of the curbs on each side, and there's a small bike lane, and there's one lane of traffic. There is no passing lane.
Right, and but point is, you're still choosing between the bike lane and the car lane to consistently inconvenience
You
the
can't drop
bikers.
your kid. You can't get to stop the car in the middle of the street with children and packages.
Yes, you
That's
can.
well, it's not. As a parent, I wouldn't advise that. So, and that's something I have a lot of experience with.
Well, don't stop in a bike lane either, is kind of the point here.
Well, if your house is in the middle of the street, it's when you got packages, it's when you got, come on, Betty, you have to be real. I wouldn't do that to you in your situation. I wouldn't do it to when my 3 daughters were 2, 4, and 6, and I
But
got
you would do it to bikers.
No, well then you know something. In that situation, the biker has to just wait a little because because the situation, just like if I'm doing something else, or if I'm in a car and I see a bike lane needed to go around, I won't get out of my car. I'll look in the rearview mirror and wait till the biker passes. If I had a car, there has to be some type of flexibility and consideration on both sides because there are safety issues on both sides. I'm
But
not
not the
faulting.
car drivers,
I'm sorry.
but not the car drivers.
I hate to cut you guys off. I was just going to make sure. I know Eric's been waiting patiently.
Okay, I'm sorry, and I'm not speaking.
No
as a-
worries. No worries.
Yes, now Eric, please go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say that there should be no financial incentive. Yeah, they shouldn't. If a person really feels that something is being done wrong, improperly, that dangers the flow of traffic and other people, there should be no financial incentive. When people know that other people are gaining financially from reporting them, people are gonna get hurt. I just foresee people exacting vengeance once they find out that somebody got money for this. Also, with a financial incentive, you're gonna have a lot of frivolous complaints. I mean, because there's no cost to submit a complaint on somebody, so that's
No,
why
it's only collected money.
But then people will submit things just because there's no cost to submit a complaint on somebody. Yes, they only get money if it's proven, but there's no cost to submit a complaint. I just want to take the financial incentive out of it. And then also, this should only apply to placarded vehicles, not privately owned vehicles. And then also, I don't think that we should jump with this. I mean, a lot of times we don't know what these placarded vehicles are doing. I mean, yeah, I suspect the worst, that they're just using for their own private, convenience. But instead of just, a penalty, why not have the agency investigate why that car was parked there and have them report, say, no, this was justified. He or she was reporting to a scene that let's say it looked like it was improper, but there was some investigation. I'm just throwing it, investigation, and it was proper. But then once it's proven that, let's say, a driver did it several times over a quarter, then they can have the placard revoked. And that should be a separate agency or commission by the mayor, and so it doesn't rely on the police department or any particular department. Also, if you have private vehicles as part of this, they're going to do what they do now and doctor their plates. I just don't want to live in a society where people report on each other. And I just think we also have to be reasonable. There's limited space out there for vehicles, all types of vehicles, and for pedestrians. But I don't want this to be too punitive, and I just want it to be reasonable so we can all abide by the rules of the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me have Lucian, because he has something illuminating to say, and then Mimi.
I apologize for some of my background noise. My youngest son doesn't appreciate the finer points of community board meetings. So I just want to address Eric's concerns about the issuance. The way it works with the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings is that anybody who gets a summons issued by oath does get their day in court. And for issuance to agencies, the city doesn't fine agencies, but the agency would have to determine whether it was a proper use of the city's placard. So they would, in effect, make that determination. The city has been moving away from using internal tribunals, and which is why oath has been expanded, especially under the de Blasio administration. That a lot of the adjudication for employee issues, or in terms of TLC for hire vehicle licensees issues, has all pretty much been moved wholesale over to oath for that reason, to keep agencies from having to do internal adjudications. This is seen as to be more neutral in that sense.
Thank you. Let's have Mimi and then Carrie Parker. I see you.
What I believe I'm hearing from Lucian is that the concern about there not being some sort of investigation, that there is essentially a rebuttal to an accusation, is already in place. I am concerned about the reward part. I think I just feel like that's just kind of extraneous. I don't know that that's necessary. So I agree with Eric that the 25% could lead to a lot of, accusations that will end up, going through oath and taking a lot of time. But also it could, create a really interesting ecosystem for abuse. So, thanks.
Thanks. Let's have Carrie, who needs to be unmuted, and then Jess.
Okay, moving to unmute. Carrie, you're able to unmute now.
I don't know if I missed, I was about a few minutes late, but am I understanding that this was legislation that failed in a prior administration and this group is seeking to resurrect it? Is that correct?
It did not appear to go up for a vote at all. It was introduced, it was, there was testimony about it, and then it disappeared.
Got it. So this is whether or not this group wants to propose to bring it back into discussion for attention by City Council.
Yes, that resolution was passed by the community board in December 2020 supporting it.
Okay. So I guess I just would ask that we consider sort of the slippery slope of having going from the sort of collective mindset of we keep ourselves safe to the reporting of, civilian against civilian, not for the same reasons that Mitch, not because of a detail of who should block the bike lane versus moving cars, but because it just leads, I just would be concerned of it leading to an ethos of reporting each other for littering, reporting each other for disposal of household trash in park containers. It just, if we start this culture of reporting each other because our government is failing to do its job, I just think that we start, it just sets up for a long-term animosity. So that would be the one thing. And then the second thing is, I do think that we need tools to fight placard abuse. I just don't know that we need to bring a sword when a pen will do. And it seems to me that we shouldn't give up on having DOT revoke placards in a percentage basis or some other method for cutting down the number of placards, as opposed to trying to have an enforcement provision by civilians. So that's it.
As long as you realize that's been tried, there was a whole flurry of laws and none of them were enforced.
I know. And until we relocate most of the city agencies outside of Tribeca Financial District and City Hall, it's hard to probably accomplish that. But anyway, those are just some thoughts.
Yes, well, no, thank you. And Jess?
Yeah, thanks, Betty. So can you guys hear me? Am I unmuted? Okay, good. So far this discussion has sort of been like at a pretty high level of abstraction in terms of thinking about this. And I just want to say that, this is empirical. Like the problem here is that is under enforcement. These things are already illegal, if I'm understanding it right. It's just that it's a very difficult thing to enforce, and it is in fact not being enforced for whatever reason. So this is a creative and logical way, in my view, to deal with that problem. And you know, along the lines of the financial incentive, I think the financial incentive is key, because you know, we need to incentivize people to actually enforce it, because that's the problem that we're trying to deal with here. You know, and all the concerns about this leading to violence and the slippery slope, well, we're sort of ignoring another possibility, which is that people just stop violating the law, which I think is probably the most likely outcome here, because it's a pretty punitive, you know, and it should be, because that's the idea, is to get people to stop doing it. And this, you know, is carefully tailored to do that. And I think that it's a logical way to do it. So that's how I look at it. You know, people veering off into the street because someone's parked in a bike lane, getting hit by a car, which is a huge problem that we have now. That's violence. You know, that's violence that we have and that we're trying to deal with. And this is a solution to a problem that we are experiencing now. So all the other concerns are hypothetical, and I think that they're unwarranted.
Yeah, thank you. And Charlie, did you have something to say? Because you said this was of interest to you. You would need to be unmuted.
I'll add, Betty, I did see Lucian put his hand up, so I didn't know if Lucian wanted to add something or as a response to anything most recent.
By all means, and then Detta.
Yeah, and Charlie, I see you unmuted. I'm just really quick, addressing what Carrie said. Gosh, what was it? Carrie, what were the points that you made? Oh boy, it's just a bit of information I was going to throw in there. I have to think about it. I can't recall. Sorry.
Sure. Well, and Charlie, did you have something to say?
Oh, so I'm audible now?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes.
I think Jess actually expressed my point of view very well. I mean, let's be realistic that I've lived down here for 28 years, about as long as Jess has lived down here. And in that entire time, the placard problem has only gotten worse. It's gotten more intractable, and clearly we have no interest in enforcement on the part of the NYPD, you know, or City Hall. Something needs to change, and if we don't try something new, then 28 years from now we're going to be having the same fruitless discussion. And just think of all of the lost opportunities to bike and walk safely and breathe freely, all the things that would come from reduced placards that we will have missed. So we need to be trying different things. And if they don't work perfectly, they can be fine-tuned.
Do you have any comment to make about the 25% going to the citizen, going to the reporter?
No, not really. No.
So either way is okay with you.
I haven't really sort of thought it through completely. You know, but those who feel that you know, we would be setting up too ambitious of a bounty system. I mean, are you willing to support a lower percentage? Because, you know, some sort of incentive, it might not be a bad thing. Or are you just concerned that the proverbial, oh, I'm only running in here for 10 seconds, in which case, of course, that driver could stop in the traffic lane, or the, you know, so-called traffic lane, for the same 10 seconds. But you know, are you willing to be flexible and lower the percentage to some other number that might still retain some kind of incentive for people to be reporting something that's kind of violating public safety and the public good?
Yeah, well, thank you. And I want everyone to think about that, because I think that'll be key to the discussion. The percent.
Betty, I just remembered, there is a law in the books for DOT to have an enforcement unit. However, since that law has passed and was signed by the mayor and the city council have zeroed out the budget for that unit. So the unit has never been able to be stood up by the agency, because it's been specifically zeroed out. So we'll see this year if it's going to be zeroed out for a third year in a row. But I think it'll be quite telling if this following administration also follows in that practice.
Yes, and in fact, the NYPD's portion of their budget for placard enforcement was also zeroed out last year.
Betty, can I respond to
No,
something Jeff
wait,
said?
no. Because I'd promised Detta and.
Oh, that's
also,
okay. I can't see the list, so I'm sorry.
Sorry, the Detta and then Robin,
Sure.
and then Pat Moore.
Yeah, can I be heard?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. It is helpful when committee members put their hands up and wait to be called on and not speak out of turn. And I appreciate all the committee members who are doing that. So I like what I heard from Michael and from Jess and from Charlie. In a way, what we're doing is just asking lawmakers to reopen the discussion. So they might hammer out a new version. So I don't think we need to stress over the specifics because the specifics aren't really there. They were there in the previous law. And what we're basically asking is for them to consider, sponsoring some sort of new similar legislation. I work in the Department of Finance. I deal with parking tickets and camera tickets. They all are adjudicated. Every person who gets a ticket has a chance to dispute it. If they lose their dispute, they have a chance to appeal the judge's decision. So that's the court system within the Department of Finance. I'm sure that Oath has the same, the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings. So no one's going to be getting a fine. I mean, they're going to be, and the way the Department of Finance does it, it's very automatic. You get your ticket. It's a very easy online dispute process. And then there's an appeal process too. So I would assume there's going to be the same. So people who are not guilty, who have a valid explanation, the judge is going to look at that. So, and also, if we're talking about 1/4 of what's collected and 175 is the maximum that would be collected, you're talking about a maximum of $43, and they're not going to get it till months later because these things go through the system slowly. So I don't see the financial incentive being anything really powerful because it's not like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to have $43 in my pocket immediately. It's going to be like, well, I'm going to take the time to do all this documentation. Maybe 6 months down the road, I get 43. Maybe the judge has reduced it. Maybe I only get $10. Like, who knows? So I would be comfortable with or without the financial incentive. I would say we could be asking our lawmakers to start looking into this and let them use their thinking too. And I agree with Jess, this is not being addressed and our government needs our help, and we can do some parking enforcement with crowdsourcing. And I see a lot of anger when a vehicle is parked wrong. And so in a way, I feel like this would alleviate some anger rather than causing more anger. So, thank you.
Thanks. Well, you did speak, you'd be a little bit flexible about the percent. Am I correct in interpreting what you said, that you would have them introduce new legislation versus reintroducing this particular bill?
I mean, most of the names on that bill are not in office anymore.
Correct.
So it was just my assumption that they'd want to use their own staffers to write the language a little differently. But
do you carry the way?
I don't. I think it's
It could be an or.
Yeah, I'm very flexible about it, but I would like to do what we can to get it back on their radar.
Thank you. And Robin and Pat? Then we'll repeat to some people whose hands are up again. Robin would have to be, yeah, she is unmuted.
Robin, you can speak. Okay, going, and gone.
let's have-
Robin,
let's have
raise your
Pat-
hand if you want to speak, okay?
Yes, okay, let's have Pat Moore speak.
I mean, I personally don't think that there's any reason to pay anyone $43 or $143. It's all about enforcement. We need to put money into the agencies that should be enforcing the laws. And we need to have more, cops or enforcement agents on the street to enforce the rules and regulations. I don't think private citizens, and I agree, someone said, if you're so concerned, as we have been on the community board before the 3-minute idling law, we took pictures and we sent it in to the proper people. If you're so concerned, you don't need to get paid. You just take the photograph and you report the violation. That's what I have to say.
So are you in favor of it's okay, except for you would get rid of the incentive,
Yes.
financial incentive?
Yes. And I would also stress that they put more money into the agencies so that they have enforcement power. Hire
Yes,
more
no, that
people.
seems valuable, but in the past, they have not used that money to do that with. They have
Right.
failed to
Well, then
enforce.
that's what they should be using the money to do that with. Obviously, it's been a problem. I've lived down here 43 years and I've seen it go from, no placard parking to ridiculous amounts of placard parking. So yes, we need to have more enforcement.
Thank you. And the only person who hasn't spoken yet, and then I'll get back to people but Justine?
Thanks so much, Betty, and excuse me for coming in late, but I guess my question with it, paying people, civilians, or giving them a reward, I guess, is what is being done for reporting this. Part of the issue is the police are not policing themselves. So a penalty that the police, whoever proposed legislation imposes 175 penalty for each violation, that the police have to pay out of their own pockets. I mean, maybe kind of focusing more on the ones who are abusing the parking and the placard parking. They need to pay. It should not be covered by taxpayer money. It should not come out of the budget of the police, funds. And the police actually need to police themselves, which is, I guess, what this is trying to do and fill in the gap, because the police are not policing themselves. Am I right? Is that what the point of it is, or?
That appeared to be the point at the time, because yes, there is no enforcement. It is brothers looking after brothers and no reporting, no enforcement's being done by choice. And I have heard that from parking enforcement people when I've asked them about it, and they've said, no, they can't, because the police, where they hope to go in their career,
Right. They don't want to
will
have that
pick on them.
record.
And so, yeah, they can't do it. They won't sign it.
There needs to be some sort of outside group that does it, perhaps. I mean, that would be a better use of the money. Fines, but then also hold these particular individuals accountable, because it's the same people who are abusing it. It's not like this is a revolving door of people. It's the same cops that are doing it, right? But anyhow, thank you for bringing this up.
Thank you. Do you have any comments to make about the incentive?
I wouldn't pay private people to do it, because that's taxpayer money that's paying private people, and I don't think that's a good use of taxpayer money.
Okay. And it looks like everyone has spoken once, so let's get back to Mitch, then Eric, Jess, then Detta.
Okay, I'm not sure, was it Kerry that was talked about the slippery slope, Betty? Because I can't see the names.
I believe so.
Okay, that actually was, I guess I didn't make that point in the beginning well enough. That's where I kind of meant to start with. And I would, nobody, I would like to see if the people that are in favor of this might be in favor of separating the placards, government cars with the private citizen cars, because that's where I see like a big a big problem. I mean, because then I agree 1,000,000,000% with Kerry's point, because listen, I would like to take pictures of, I'm on the trains all the time. And I can't tell you, before this mandate's going to be lifted, I would love to tell people and be able to take pictures of people without, at least 20% of all the train cars I've been on for the last 6 months, there's people with no masks. And I have to move to another section because of immune compromised elderly people in my family. And so, but I could see that if I would go up to some people and take their picture, that might start a problem. Or all the people like not picking up after their dogs in all our streets, or whether almost getting hit by a car that's making a turn that doesn't slow down
Well,
at a stop
let's
sign.
stick to just what this law is about. It is not about any of those things.
No, but the thing is, like what Kerry was talking about, the slippery slope, because or include, and I'm just saying this to make a point. I'm not for it, to include many people outside of this committee, because it's on the board, have spoken about this in full board meetings, getting hit by bicycles going the wrong way on the sidewalk or on the street, and like trying to stop to take a
Let's
picture.
restrict ourselves to just this particular
No, but
topic.
that's the point that Kerry was trying to make. So like the slippery, like the slippery slope and of citizen against citizen is, I think, would be a dangerous thing. And I was wondering if we can at least separate the city agency and placard cars with this thing from then, lumping the private cars into this thing, because I don't think you would have any opposition from anybody on the board if we did that.
Blocking a bus lane, you care if it's a private or a city
Yes,
placard?
but yes,
care?
I do. Yes, I do. I agree. You're right. But those are the instances. But then there are other instances that have been brought up where it's not just black and white, but at least as a start, especially if there's going to be some type of citizen against another citizen, is to separate the. If we got anything done with the placards in the city and the government agencies, 90% of the problem would be solved. But that probably won't happen in our lifetime. And like I said, I thought Kerry made it's very dangerous to have citizen against citizen in the private sector, even if sometimes it might be the right thing to do.
Well, keep in mind, it is citizen against citizen already.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Betty.
It is citizen against citizen already. When you're dead because somebody blocked the bike lane, that's
Yes.
animosity.
No, nobody's for that. Nobody's, like I said, I'm a pedestrian that takes public transportation 99% of the time. So,
yes, and no accusations. I'm just saying, when people are talking about citizen against citizen, keep in mind it goes both ways.
With that financial incentive, like I said, $43 might not be much to some people on the board, but it's a lot for if to some people that might make a career out of it. That are
But
living
is
on
that
the
your
streets.
pivotal point?
My pivotal point was
decision making.
Was anybody else for separating the placards, the government agency cars, from the private citizen cars in putting something like this forward? Otherwise, I know personally I would have to be against it, even though I'm for many parts of this.
Okay, so the money itself isn't the biggest issue for you.
No, the money, I definitely agree
clarify.
with I think was Eric. I would be definitely against the money. I mean, if you're reporting something, because that also would create, there would be people that would, like report people that maybe weren't really guilty. And then to have to go through the system, with the adjudication thing, is, everybody knows it's crazy. And, I think it's opening up a can of worms that is not going after the real people like the placards.
Okay, thanks. Let's go on to Eric, Eric, then Jess, then Detta, then Rosa.
Yes, I want to add that the issue is really enforcement. I'm reluctant to have another law when the real issue is enforcement by City Hall and the police. And I do agree that this should be separated between placarded vehicles and just civilians or private citizens. This is we hold the official vehicles to a higher standard, and definitely the financial incentive should be removed. Thank you.
Great. And Jess, Vendetta, then Rosa.
Yeah, so first I just want to say something about the slippery slope argument, because slippery slope arguments are always interesting because they're hypothetical, and it's really, I mean, the NYPD has offered bounties for a lot of things in the past. I mean, I think there was a time when they were offering money for people to turn in illegal dirt bikes, legal ATVs. There are bounties for people to snitch on other people all the time, and it hasn't led to allowing us to take pictures of people's dogs or taking pictures of people without a mask on the subway. And if it did, then we can talk about that when it comes up. But again, it's getting highly philosophical when we have a very concrete problem right now that we want to deal with, to not do something about it because we have some highly hypothetical concern just seems a little bit frivolous to me. And to get to the financial incentive, I mean, look, the financial incentive is there for a reason, because we know that if we take away the financial incentive, less people are going to report it. That's just the reality. So the financial incentive to me is key because it's tailored directly to the problem, which is we want more enforcement. So if we want more enforcement, we have to have the financial incentive. We can get rid of the financial incentive, we can make it lower, but basic economics will tell you that you're just going to get less enforcement. So it's just a matter of how big a problem you think this is. I mean, I agree, the holy grail would be to take this money and put it into an enforcement arm of the DOT, but there's a reason that hasn't happened, is because that's a massively expensive and logistical nightmare. We can deal with this right now, the snap of our fingers, by letting everyone use their phones to enforce this, or we can, engage further in the pipe dream of having a new police force out there to deal with this. So again, I think of this practically and not philosophically. If we want enforcement of this, we have a way to do it. This is a way to do it. And we either think it's a problem that we want to deal with or we don't.
Thank you. I think that is the crux of the issue. Is it a problem to be dealt with or not? Detta, and then Rosa. Detta, you muted?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, I like following Jesse. He's very eloquent, says everything that needs to be said. What was I going to say? I was going to say that this would just be empowering, because right now, when I see this kind of illegal parking, dangerous illegal parking, whether it's placard abuse or other kinds of, it's very frustrating, and this would be one way where people could be empowered to help shape their surroundings in a positive way.
Thank you. And Rosa?
Thank you. So a couple of things. One is, I think we obviously agree with everybody on the placards issue. I remember I was touring Gail Brewer around the Brooklyn Bridge Manhattan site, and there were like vehicles, both private and police vehicles, like parked on the sidewalk, and we were trying to get around them. And she was taking pictures and saying that, well, this is like not supposed to be happening. And I mean, if she, as at the time as Manhattan Borough President, was noting that, and she had no method of enforcement. I mean, what luck do we have unless we have stronger rules about what we need to happen here? And I do think we do have to have stronger. Well, I guess we theoretically we have the rules. We just need some form of enforcement. And obviously NYPD and DOT aren't really cutting it for us. I do think absolutely it's a safety issue. I think it's a convenience issue. I mean, if vehicles are literally on the sidewalk and people have to walk on the road, that's problematic. Secondly, I'm a pedestrian. I don't have a car. I don't have a bike. I don't know how to bike. Anyways, but point being though that, we have to also think about commercial vehicles, right? Because I see them in the bike lanes all the time, and it really, really upsets me. So I get like, I'm like one of those angry people whenever I see that, just because I think it's a safety issue. And I have to say that when I think of safety, I think of it in order of priority of who is the most vulnerable. So, you know, pedestrians before cyclists, cyclists before cars, and, you know, cars, you know, before, like, let's say buses. But I feel like we have to think about, to me, if it is a safety issue versus a convenience issue, I'm landing on the safety side every single time. In terms of the enforcement, I feel like, you know, people have brought up some really good points about, like, the NYPD is not ever going to police itself. I think we all recognize that. That's just reality. I think sister agencies like the DOT also have a really, really hard time enforcing things against other sister agencies like the NYPD. So there has to be some other, you know, third arm that actually manages this, that it is not, doesn't have to answer to NYPD or DOT. And I think that the idea of sort of keeping the funds, you know, dedicated to that instead of perhaps paying civilians to you know, deal with this, might be a good way to go if that's even possible. But yeah, I you know, I don't know how I feel about the financial incentive for people. I think the financial enforcement of penalties is absolutely necessary. And also maybe just an escalating penalty. So if you're caught with you know, in the wrong area, then maybe you get one charge. If you're also caught with a fake placard, you know, that's a higher charge. And if you're caught with a fake placard multiple times, then that's an even higher charge. So those are just some thoughts. I mean, this neighborhood is crazy for placard parking abuse. It's impossible to walk around in so many places. And I think that we have to make the streets work. And right now they don't work for anybody. They don't work for the cars. They don't work for the cyclists. They don't work for the pedestrians. We have to start addressing it because, you know, this is our home. We live here. And we have to walk around. And the city is, you know, the streets and the sidewalks are public space. So we have to, you know, deal with this issue. It's coming to a critical point, actually. But that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I guess what it gets down to is, how do we move forward with this? It sounds like there's definitely a split. There's no question. The issue is, it sounds like as if the majority is saying we need to do something with having some kind of enforcement.
Could you
This
ask if
particular
we can
issue
split
is
up the
talking, wait,
placards?
excuse me. This particular issue is talking about civilian enforcement. So that's what I'm talking about, and we're talking about at this time.
Right, that's what I'm asking you. There are some people that are for civilian enforcement concerning only the placards, government vehicle and commercial vehicles. I was wondering what the feeling is of possibly something like that, where I think there would be more of a consensus.
Well, let's hear from Frances Curtis, and she'll be the last one to speak on this.
Okay.
But since her hand is up.
Hi, thank you, and I apologize for coming late. I just have a comment in that I think that our issues with the parking in the streets and even with the restaurant and the open seating stuff we're going to have to deal with is unique to our community because of the way that we're structured in terms of the landscape, and also with the amount of municipal. We got Wall Street down here. We've got all the municipal courts, and we got a lot going on here as far as city government and big business. So there is a lot of traffic, a lot of entities moving in and out of this area. And then on top of that, we want tourism. We want people to come and visit the city for the unique aspects of the community. So I'm wondering if is there a way for us to look at that as a priority for us, because we are a unique entity in this whole in this whole city in terms of our location and all the different kinds of things that go on down here. And I know at some point, you know, congestion pricing was looked at for a lot of various reasons, but I think that we might want to consider something really special for Community Board One because of all the various elements that we have going on down here. And then they're trying to build more high rises and bring more people in. And so I just like to throw that out there in terms of for us to consider to help us with our problem here. Because you're right, Betty, this is a tremendous issue, and I'm sure that it's going to be on the table forever. But I think we have to stand up and look at the fact that we are a really unique space in this city, you know, because just looking at licensing and the restaurants and the streets now that they want to pass the law and make it permanent, it's like it's driving me crazy, and in terms of how we're going to move forward on that. But we do have special situation here, and I'm going to shut up because I think I made my point.
Thanks. So are you for or against civilian reporting of these particular violations?
I didn't hear the whole conversation, but just to hear the premise of it, it makes me think of what was going on in Texas with the abortion thing, and you know, people getting paid to turn in people who were doing abortions and stuff like that. That drove me crazy. You know, that is just a different kind of incentive that I'm not comfortable with. You know,
actually,
so
there are two different parts to this. One
Okay.
is civilian reporting because there are a lot of eyes out there
right.
throughout the city, and those are for hazardous obstruction of a vehicle, of a bicycle lane, a bus lane when the restrictions are in effect, sidewalk, crosswalk, or fire hydrant. It's a very
Right.
specific law.
Okay. Yeah. And you know, I there's so much of it, you know, because just walking out of my apartment on Fulton Street, you know, in a one block area, I could report like 10 different problems going on. So I could make a lot of money. And then you look at the type of people, you know, and their circumstances, and you know, and how they might want to profitize off, you know, making these complaints now that they have that availability of money, and it's rampant. I think that the bigger picture is we have a unique situation, and we have to take all of that into consideration.
But these laws are the city. We're not going to write laws for our district. So the question is, should citizens be able to report these? And then the second part of it is, should there be a financial incentive for doing so?
And I don't think that I don't feel comfortable with that in Community Board One. You know,
financial incentive.
Yeah, I don't think that one shoe fits all. And I back to my original opening in terms of us being a unique community, and I can't see that for Community Board One. So if I say no and it affects the whole city, well, I'm sorry about neighborhoods where they could probably benefit from it. But as far as my interest here in Community Board One, I'd say no.
Okay, so you're saying that citizens shouldn't report, and citizens, so of course they wouldn't get reimbursed.
Yeah. Betty, you're forgetting the third
don't
question.
care if people park in the sidewalks, on the crosswalks, in the fire hydrants, bus lanes, and bicycle lanes.
That's not a fair question.
I'm not encouraging it. People know that that's not there. You know, there's supposed to be signs up, and that's not what there's, you know, and you're not supposed to do that, but they do it anyway. So
correct.
I don't know.
Do you want enforcement or not is the real question.
Betty, can you ask the third question that I've asked you a few times to include in your two? The third question is
The
that
answer to the question is yes. I want enforcement. How
Yes.
that is done, it blows my mind in terms of that. That's the issue.
Okay, but this is a very specific question and it's civilian enforcement because we don't have control over the others.
No, I am not in support of civilian enforcement. I actually think that, and somebody made reference to it in terms of things happening in our lifetime. I think there's a lot of things that need to be restructured in city government in terms of what the police do. Because I really have issues, and in terms, I think Mitch was talking about in terms of being on the subway and approaching people, and I don't see the police as
Yes, don't confuse,
okay.
with
All right,
Jess
all
on
right,
this
all right.
one.
But anyway,
Don't conflate different
I'm
issues and
sorry.
pretend like they're equal because they're not.
Okay.
It's
But
Betty, can
no.
you ask the third question, please, that I asked you before? You asked
Please ask your third question.
you asked you posed two questions about for that we are you for enforcement or you for civilian enforcement, and then I had asked you to also ask, is anybody in for separating the placards and the city agencies from the and commercial vehicles from the private vehicles? So if you can include that when you ask the question, because that affects how some people might respond.
But it still requires enforcement. It's
Right.
just
Right.
who's on first, who's on second.
No, right, but
So-
taking away the financial incentive. But I'm saying, Betty, you don't even want to pose to separate the placards from
Well,
the
no, I
private
have
vehicles?
asked, but I think Frances has told you she's against citizen reporting, period.
Okay,
So there's
okay.
no point to ask her which kinds of cars she cares
No,
about.
Well,
She said
and the
none.
answer to that question is yes. I do think that there should be a separation, but yes, I am not in support of citizen reporting, Mitch.
Right, which is
Okay.
key to this particular discussion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll put my
Okay.
hand down.
Detta? Are you muted? Yes, you are.
Okay, sorry, I'm two devices because one is insufficient. So this is just an example. The other day, there was a vehicle parked in a bike lane. And it was creating a very dangerous situation. I called 311 and reported it. And it had the rear plate was defaced, as Eric points out that people do. So I reported it to 311 that it was parked in the bike lane and it had the rear plate defaced. And it was closed by the police department 15 minutes later with the clause, no action needed. And they hadn't come out, they hadn't checked it. It was still there. The rear plate was still defaced. So that's why I like the idea of this. This would not go to the NYPD. This would go to Oath. This would be a chance to report something and have some sort of consequences. Secondly, I think the discussion Mitch is trying to have is a bit difficult because if you are talking about civilians reporting illegally parked vehicles, they don't know a real placard from a fake placard, from an agency vehicle, from a non-agency vehicle. I mean, from an official vehicle, from a not official vehicle. So I think it's a very hard distinction to make. Also, right now, we're looking to change behavior. This is not like people right now, if they have a real or fake parking placard or something they feel ties them to government enough that they'll avoid a ticket, right? And they have free parking at work or wherever they want to park. But if they get a ticket and it's enforced, that person might make a new choice in the future. They might choose to put their vehicle in a garage. They might choose to leave their vehicle at home and come in on the train or the subway. So it's, this is the step we need to take towards changing that kind of behavior. If we don't take it, we're just going to keep having the behavior. And anyway, I just think also, as I said before, we don't need to hammer out the details. Like, I just would like to urge our legislators to really have something similar to what was proposed before. And that's it. Thank you.
Right, but that's where the details are a little bit critical. And that is one,
Right.
can
Okay.
civilians do it? Two, should there be a financial incentive for doing it?
I mean,
And nobody here is debating this distance from a school building entrance or exit, which I'm going to assume they had a reason for doing.
I'd like it with the incentive, but if that's a deal breaker for our community board, then I'd like to urge our legislators to consider it no matter what. So I would, I'd prefer it with an incentive, but
But leave that a little more flexible sounding.
Betty, did we want to do I hate to interrupt. I just wanted to do a time check. I know it's been a good discussion, but it's been about, we're an hour and 15 minutes in.
Yes.
So I don't know if you wanted, I don't know what you were thinking. Should we do a straw poll on like some of those like 1, 2, or 3 questions to see
Michael,
what
why
would
don't you
make it
do
into a resolution?
Why don't you do a straw poll with the intention of, I will draft a resolution that I will disseminate to people to look at with final voting next month.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So I think like the 3 issues are what? It's like, hey, are you in favor of civilian? Are you in favor of an incentive? And I guess C, if we want to ask it, Mitch's question, are you in favor of kind of trying to split up or focus on placard versus the broader issues of the older resolution? Does that sound right to you?
That sounds very good.
Do you want to try doing hand raises for this? So have committee members raise their hands to see
Well,
if
first, everybody put your hands down.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Those 3 things you set forth make sense. My question is there, and it may not be possible, I like the idea of having the oath of administrative trials and hearings be the entity that maybe is adjudicating this instead of the police, because the police aren't doing it. But I don't like the idea of civilian complaints and incentives to civilians. Is there a possibility to say, hey, pull this out of the police's hands and put it into a separate agency? And that's something I could, because sorry, no, but I would say yes to this.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, I think let's see if enough people aren't in favor of civilian, then I think that's yeah, let's take a look at that. Cool. So if we're going to do it, let's do the first question, which is, and everyone, if you're familiar with it, just raise your hand like you are when you're saying, hey, I have something to say. But are you in favor?
And just committee
members. Yes, just committee members, please. But thanks everyone else for, it's been valuable. So are you in favor of some sort of legislation that would be civilian reporting, these civilian enforcement of these things? Cool. So it looks like we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 8. Is that right?
Well, Detta, I don't see your hand at all.
I see Detta has 2.
Oh, okay.
And so she had 1.
Then I was going to double counter.
Yep.
8 is my count of committee members present. Hands
are disappearing.
Right, they're taking them down for his next request.
Great. So then the next question is, I'm blanking. What's our next question? It was
financial incentive.
The financial incentive. Are you in favor or against? Sorry, are you in favor of some sort of financial incentive for the civilian enforcement? If yes, raise your hand.
Sorry, I lowered a hand.
Yes, I saw that, Lucian. You're lowering my hand.
Sorry, Detta. Sorry.
I'm here twice, by the way, because I'm on a phone and a computer, because my computer doesn't have
That's okay.
Mike.
We'll only count your hand once. Just only raise
I
one
only
account.
put it up once.
Yeah. Perfect.
Cool. Okay, so I'm seeing 5 in favor, and I'm assuming the other 3 are against. Great. And so then the final question is, are you in favor of splitting up, or are you in favor of narrowing the scope of this just to focus on placard? Cool. So it looks like we've got 2 of 8. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Betty.
Well, I guess the question I'd have about that, the last one you asked about focusing on just placards.
Sure.
If you could redo that, but have everybody vote, because again, if it passes committee, but it can't make it through the full board, it's not a good resolution anyway.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so let's get so we want a straw poll of even
Of
anyone
all
on the community board.
Yeah, all CB1 members that are present.
All CB1 members. So I'll ask again, yeah, just to get a broader poll. Are you in favor of splitting or of narrowing the scope just to focus on placard?
Okay, that didn't change.
Great.
Did
I'll
you want
turn
to
it
look
back to
more
you.
broadly at the other 2 as well?
Say again? Oh, yeah, you want to ask the,
If
yeah.
you could put your hands down, so you're starting from 0 again, thanks.
Sure. So full CB1, anyone who's a community board member, are you in favor of civilian enforcement?
Without financial incentive, right?
Yeah, I'll
That's
ask
gonna
the
be looked at
financial
separately.
incentives separately. Mhm. Cool. Did you get those down, Betty?
I think I put my hand up by mistake. Michael, could you just repeat the question?
Yeah. Are you in favor of civilian enforcement?
Okay, then
Civilian reporting.
okay, so I know for this, if I made a mistake, I apologize.
Yeah, no
No,
worries.
but am I wrong? You mean civilian enforcement without a financial incentive?
Yeah,
I mean, but
without financial incentive, because I'm going to ask again, we'll ask a second question, which
Okay.
asks you if you are or aren't in favor of financial. So great. So if you could all put your hands down, I'll ask that exact question. Are you in favor, or raise your hand if you're in favor of financial incentives for the reporting?
I guess the bigger issue is, because this one's getting closer with the incentives, how many of the people who are for it are actually
Wait,
flexible about the amount?
I just want to say this. I think Miss Frances Curtis, she had her hand up, but I just remember her saying that she was against financial incentives.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So Fran, Francis, I'm not sure why you have your hand up.
Right. And you're muted.
Yeah. No, it's all good. I think the point of
because I'm
Betty
not pressing the correct things here, so it's like okay, yeah, you're right.
That's fine. I think the point of the exercise again is just as we find, seems like we've got more support for just some sort of civilian enforcement, a little bit less support for adding the financial incentive. So Betty, pick up where you left off.
Yeah, which in fact could be a negative to the overall bill.
Really?
Right, because I think some of the
didn't
people who are
understand that.
against incentives, that would be enough to make them vote no, even though the reporting itself would be
I
okay with
see.
them.
Yeah.
Is there a way to water down the resolution so it's just sort of asking for the city council to reconsider this issue, because we're not the one writing the ultimate bill anyway, so we could just ask them to we're watering down a bill that they've already written.
I think that's definitely something that could be crafted.
Yeah. Just a thought.
Yeah, I agree with that. Something along the lines of, hey, the community board voted in favor of this old legislation. This is still an issue, and we'd like you to do something. in a similar vein with a similar intent, something that doesn't need to go into all the specifics. I think that seems like it'd have pretty broad support.
Should we straw poll that?
Yeah.
Because this is a case of them allowing the law, really focusing on them allowing citizen reporting.
Yeah, so I guess we'll ask the committee specifically. Would you
Could I
go
ask
ahead?
a question? What's the difference between what we could do now by calling 311 and allowing civilian reporting?
311 ignores you.
311 goes to, it routes it to NYPD, or parking enforcement.
So now and this would be different because
it goes directly
to
oath.
Yeah, I could answer that. So 311 logs a message, and which is reviewed by the enforcement agency as a request for enforcement personnel to be dispatched or rerouted to observe and issue a summons. Whereas this, in the model of the commercial vehicle idling law, would allow someone to take a video, capture certain characteristics of the illegal condition, send it to oath, they drop it in like a oath drop box with a description of what it is. Oath reviews it and then issues the summons, seeing that all the conditions of illustrating that it is indeed an offense are present, and then according to whoever the vehicle is registered to would receive the summons, and they would have their day in court, or they could just pay the summons like a parking ticket, if you get a parking ticket under a windshield wiper.
And what does oath do now? So there's no way to get to oath now. They have no jurisdiction over this stuff.
I think oath.
Don't they get camera reporting?
Oath only gets stuff. I don't know about camera, but I know that if you are pulled over on a bicycle and you show them a city ID, it goes to oath. And if you show them a driver's license, it goes to state DMV court. So that's the only traffic violations I know that currently go to oath, as far as I know. But I have a driver's license, but I don't have a car in the city, so I haven't really had a chance. And I paid every parking ticket I just paid, so I don't know out of experience. Maybe Data would know.
I thought the bus cameras went there. I thought
Camera
any of the
tickets?
automated ones.
Camera tickets and parking tickets. Well, there's two kinds of parking tickets. Some of them go directly to NYPD, but some of them come to the Department of Finance. And camera tickets from the DOT come to the Department of Finance. The Department of Finance has a court. And so that there is a dispute process and an appeal process. And this sounds similar to how camera tickets are handled, because the camera takes the picture and or I should say bus lane tickets. The camera takes the picture, it's reviewed, it's made sure that the vehicle was in the bus lane for a period of time, and then the ticket is issued. Yeah.
So by saying you want a civilian complaints, it's basically allowing the calls that are being complained of now to go to some place that might possibly do enforcement.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, because I gave the example of when I called 311 and it went to NYPD and they chose not to do enforcement.
Got it. So yeah, Betty, what do you think about, should we do a straw poll of the community board to see if everyone's in favor of dropping, not opining on the money situation, and just focusing on
guys, I know you all want to be super cautious after the last couple of resolutions that have come out of this committee, having had a lot of deliberation at full board. But I do have to give you a time check that we are going to lose some members. And I want to make sure that you get through your agenda, because I know that there's some people who, there is a State of the Union. I was reminded the State of the Union is tonight. There will be some pressure for people to watch that out of interest. And we also have someone from DOT here, and I'm not sure how long she can stay as well. So
Oh, great. So yeah, Betty, do you want to just push? We could come up with a few draft resolutions with
Why don't we do that during
for
the
next.
week and for next, and we'll just do it next month
Sounds good. Sounds good.
with
Thanks,
the
guys.
time. And let's let, if Jennifer Lynn, do you have anything to add or to say? An update?
Not on the topic you discussed, but I
Well,
do
not any
have
topic.
about any topic. I do have a quick announcement. On March 7th at 6 p.m., DOT is going to be hosting a workshop. This workshop is going to be discussing pedestrian, cyclist, and vehicle improvements along Canal Street between West Side Highway and the Manhattan Bridge. So I encourage anyone who's available to attend this, but this is not the only workshop that we'll be doing. There might be some other types of outreach that we'll be gathering feedback and, just to see what we can improve on Canal Street.
How will that be, where will that be done and how will people get access to it in case it's online, for instance?
It is a online workshop that we'll be doing. I actually sent some flyers to Lucian today, so I hope that he can distribute that. I could also try to see if I could put in the link to register for the workshop itself.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Does this involve community board 2 as well?
It's community board 1, 2, and 3.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Great, then let's move on to the next topic, because again, we do want to watch time carefully. Co-naming, and this hopefully will go a lot faster because this is just picking a process and letting that group work with it. The guidelines for individuals, I just want to remind people, because if we do have existing ones, they are problematic. For instance, a perspective, this is what our applicants see when they want to submit something. So this one, a prospective honoree must be deceased, a New York City resident or native, and or an individual of great significance in New York City. Have a minimum of 20 years of community involvement, or be an individual whose death has occurred. In other words, this is not written in the easiest way to follow, and there are lots of if, ands, and buts that make it rather confusing. It could use some improvement. I know other people are looking for other things to be done. But next one, because we have 3 sets of guidelines. There are guidelines for organizations. In this case, the organizational honorees have to be nonprofit organizations with at least 30 years in the community involvement and have extraordinary or consistent voluntary commitment and dedication to the community. Again, not very clear. Next one, because we do have a mandate we do have a resolution to rework these. Hopefully people will just take it in that vein. Guidelines for historical places and events was done later. The other 2 were a little bit more measurable. The historic event or place must be recognized as significant by historical society and or appropriate group, have been mentioned in major film, book, or international news stories. Again, much more look at the visitors and international people. If they be identified as on a widely available map or at near the proposed co-naming location. So there'd be more of a tie-in to what you're co-naming with where the event or place was. Next one, because what I'd really like to get from people, oh, sorry, I forgot there was this. There's a whole bunch of additional considerations that basically negate some of the other things or leave a lot of flexibility to the board, which has raised its own issues. And next, what I would like from the bigger group is I would suggest that we have a small working group that develops suggested criteria. Again, only the committee can vote on anything. So for those who are concerned, we're giving too much power to a small working group. That's not true. Only the committee can vote on things. The advantage of a working group is they do not have to be committee members to be on it. And it can be a small group. We don't have to worry about quorum. There's a lot of the niceties that are much more flexible for a working group. Again, not for the committee, which will do the voting, which is why they do the voting. So are there any objections to using a working group to develop the criteria that they will bring to the committee? And the committee will then take it, if passed, to the larger board. Good, since there are no objections, anybody who'd like to be on the small working group, by all means, send me an email with your interest and why.
I would say send it to Betty and Tammy, because that way Tammy can convene the thing, but definitely.
And CC it to Lucian, so he knows. Thank you. A little bit about the vision for the guidelines to be developed. And some of the things I'm thinking of when I say vision, is it obviously for me, one of them is to make it easy for the applicants and the committee members to understand, get rid of some of the ambiguities. Protective of the limited number of streets that we have available in our district, because we're only talking about our district, although the law is citywide. Keep in mind, there is no expiration date written into the law, and there are no renewals. So when we give a code name, it could be here for 500, 1,000 years. And I think that some of Tammy's comment reflected this when she said, think globally, and by all means, think over time of the significance of what you're giving away and what is left for future generations to be able to name as well. And recognizable and significant over time. You know, what, are you going to think of the same thing 100 years from now? And Pat Moore, your view on visions.
I mean, maybe that's something that needs to go into this new, the new rules and regulations, that the name is co-named for a specific amount of time and not forever.
Well, and I think that kind of gets to the last item is, should we have consider a resolution, this working group that they bring to the committee, consider a resolution to change or suggest modifications to the New York City street co-naming law? Because we as a community board do not control it. It is a city law.
Betty, can I ask you a question?
Yes, Mitch, and then Alice, please.
Thank you. It's an interesting point you bring up, of course, the co-naming, like the name could be up for a billion years, but even though it's saying forever, I mean, there's been many instances in this country where, like, a couple of 100 years later, it turns out that the street of the building that the person was named after, that the building was named after, turns out they were part of the KKK or the Confederacy or this or that, and then action then was taken to remove that name down from that dormitory or building or street. So I think there are, overriding instances where, even though it's written that the name is the name once it's granted, I mean, I think there are mechanisms to, if new information comes out in 100 years that this person, was an axe murderer, that the name could be taken down, correct?
Thank you. And I think actually you're speaking very eloquently to the last item, which is, should this working group look at a resolution for change or suggesting modifications to the New York City street co-naming law? Because there may be cases where they want to rethink, right, or even ask for, should there be renewals, so that over time, when some of the sentimentality is gone, you say,
Something I would prefer to relook at things of new information that might come up, but in 100 years or 200 years, obviously the sentimentality might not be there, but maybe the person was a great person, but in 200 years nobody would know, left or right, what that the person did for their community. So like I said, I would be for part of that. In basically in a practical way, if information comes up where the person was like a racist or a member of the Confederacy or something like that, but after 200 years, there's going to be less sentimentality. That doesn't mean the person wasn't deserving. So, like I said, I don't think it's a black and white thing, but it's definitely something to be considered.
Great. And again, I think that's why that was added, that the resolution to change or suggest modifications to the street co-naming law, because maybe it's a little too rigid the way it's currently written. Alice, and then Pat Moore again.
Hi there. Sort of was volunteered to give a little of the history here for anybody who wasn't on the board years past. I'm sure, as Mitchell is highlighting immediately, the controversy on street co-naming in the city of New York is immense and has been for many, many years and always will be, I imagine. And there's probably no amount of investment in time and energy that's going to probably solve that as to who's important, why they're important, and for how long they will remain important, and what in fact is important, and should it be an individual, and etc. And I sent around a great article that was written just last month or the month before, which I think would be helpful on this very point, and from the New York Times. And I think I just wanted to make sure folks recognize that the guidelines, which I was very involved in, I actually started Community Board One's guidelines. I think it was in the 90s when I met Julie Menon, when we didn't even have any guidelines. And then we started out with sort of a crippled version. And in 2003, we were really challenged with the co-naming of after 9/11. And I'm sure a lot of you remember, I see Pat shaking her head, how difficult that was. And in 2003, this community board actually put a moratorium. We passed a resolution putting a moratorium on all street code namings for 9/11 victims until the memorial was completed, because of course, out of 3,000 people, there was no end. And this, of course, became an issue. Most recently, many of you might recall the co-naming that came up on the corner of Lisbonard Street. And there are many other examples, but in the interest of time, I will not review them all. But the most recent one this board had to reckon with was the co-naming that came in front of us for a traffic transit officer who had died in Iraq, and he had worked 1 year in the transit station located on the corner of Lisbonard Street and 6th Avenue. And so this was for a co-naming of West Broadway. The community board voted against it. They brought up the 9/11 argument. They brought up the fact there was a moratorium, which we somehow forgot about. And in any case, it was overridden by our city council member because of her deference to the New York City Police Department. And I provide these examples just to reckon and to recognize that whatever we, so, and then I also will say that a working group was advised not so many years ago. I can't remember, maybe Lucian remembers, where I think it was right after so it would be 2019. It's not so long ago where we had a working group for rewriting the co-naming. That's why I want to make sure people are aware of that. And it was quite a large group of people who were very invested in, looking at this. And Anthony Notara, former board chair, has pretty invested in it. And so what you're seeing in front of you is not something that's ancient history, but was something that we all tried to work out. And it's not easy. I'd say the few things that you should be really looking at in this new iteration, and I'm happy to volunteer to continue working on these issues, is, the sort of, one thing that I remember we fought over and didn't put in, which I regretted, and I wanted to, I remember, was, how you really define somebody's active and significant involvement in a community, and, how widely recognized and how positive was their involvement. And it's something I think that needs to be better fleshed out. So it's a point to consider in the next go round, is that those sorts of definitions. And if anybody, needs any information on any of this history, I'm sure Lucia can provide it, but I would say that a fair amount of work was done and a lot more could be done. But the area that I think would be most helpful to consider as a committee is considering, when we did touch on this, what other ways could be used to honor people in our community, not just arguing over whether a co-name. And this is something that is so obvious whenever you see a plaque, which I know I fought for on Lisbonard Street for David Ruggles. It is so helpful to know and be able to read about the contributions someone gave in a community and understand who they are on the side of a building or on a tree or on a bench versus the street co-naming, which of course we all look up and say, who is that? So it's something that I would love to see as part of this effort, is that the community really starts to identify what regulations, how we go about getting a bench. These are things that are easily, found in city regulations, but to really help people who come to us who want somebody to be honored, giving them the options of what those avenues could be. That's it. Thank you. I'm going to watch Our President soon, but if I can be any help, and Betty, I'd love to volunteer on this.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and I thank you for that.
Just before
You
you
will be a
go,
member.
that was exactly what I was going to say, is that I think we should make suggestions, which we've talked about often, other ways other than co-naming. And, we walk up and down Broadway and we see all of these plaques embedded in the street. And I'm a Garmento, so up in garment land, we have all these plaques of all these people who did stuff in the garment industry. There is no reason why we cannot put a plaque somewhere. Or if we decide to co-name, and we do have the street sign up, I think we also need to embed something underneath that sign in the sidewalk telling you who that person is and why they're being honored with the co-naming. Other than that, you walk by and you go, who? So, but thank you, Alice. I was going to say some of the same stuff.
Thank you. And I'm going to have Patrick speak last, and then I just want to make a couple announcements.
I'm repeating something I said in the last meeting. I just think the whole thing is an honorific that's way past its prime and time, and we're struggling with how to quantify greatness. Look, people can figure it out in other ways. Street co-namings is probably an honorific that's past its time. We ought to, in my view, encourage the city council to just do away with that law. It's silly.
Thank you. And that's why I put that last item in. I think this working group, I wanted people to realize the full range of things this working group is going to do. It's not just rewriting, but also to look at alternatives as well as what to do about the law itself. So thank you. So with that, I will gather what people say, but their interest, and let you all know who the small working group is going to be. We'll proceed that way. And next, there are just a few brief things to mention. That would be fun. New York City, the DOT posted, there is a new Staten Island ferry. Some of you might have seen it. It's called Sandy Ground. And it was commissioned, it will be commissioned actually in June. And it is to honor New York's first free Black community. That's exciting news. Those who are riding to Staten Island. From our borough president, Mark Levine. He has been very active, you've probably seen, about subway stations and putting in platform screen doors. None of them are going to be in our district, but at least there's a start. So that'll be interesting to follow. Next, New York City Ferry is pushing that they have an app, or you can go to their website and you can get real-time updates. For those of you who are planning to use the ferry, you might find this useful because they can also push route-specific notifications to you. So if you go somewhere and you want to know if your ferries might be delayed or what's going on, by all means, look at their app and utilize that to make your day more efficient. Next. New York City Department of Planning had their tweet up. They have, New York City Council has approved the open restaurant zoning amendment. This is a giant step, they say, a giant step forward towards the permanent outdoor dining program in all New York City communities. That was the biggest reason for this. We always had them, some other communities did not have. We're not allowed to have outdoor dining. Anyway, it is anticipated for 2023, as we've always known. And now the New York City Council and the New York City communities are going to work on designing the guidelines. And that's what the DOT is going to be doing, and we're going to be working on this coming year. Next. Yes, in support of the mayor's plan to improve safety at 1,000 intersections across New York City. In this case, a lot of it is about changing the signals timing, and they're going to have some pedestrian only times. So when none of the cars will be moving at all, the pedestrians will be a lot safer that way. So we can follow and see what happens in our district. So that'll be interesting. Next.
I just got a notification that Patrick raised his hand. Did you have something on this, Patrick?
Nope.
Oh, never
Just
mind.
a false start. Sorry.
Yeah, so just the last one. And this you all got from Lucy, but just to let you know some of the changes going on at the city jails in Manhattan, because it is kind of this week. And Francis, do you have a comment? I think this is the last notification I have.
No, I'm not doing this right.
Okay, that's fine. If you look, Michael, I think this is the last slide.
Yeah, sorry, I
Great.
had to unmute. Yes, that's the last slide.
Thank you. Then if no one has any comments, I guess we can finish this meeting.
Yeah, right under the
Thank
wire.
you
I
all.
guess is the
Yes.
speech at 8.
Yes.
I have a
see
question.
you.
Why didn't I see the slides?
I think it starts at 9, no?
What?
Oh, it's at 9. Okay, gotcha.
That 9. But what am I doing that I couldn't see the slides you had up?
That's odd. You should be able to see them. Does everyone else see them?
I see them.
Okay.
I saw them.
I see.
You know me. Me and technology, what can I say?
Yeah.
We'll talk. So thank you everybody for coming and see you
Oh,
next month.
I do have a question, Betty.
Yes.
If the city council, the restaurant thing isn't that going to be supposed to be under DOT?
Correct.
Isn't that, yeah. So I'm
Wasn't there
excited.
some
I'm
wasn't there
anticipating.
some discussion about it not just being under DOT?
I only
I thought there
heard
was some
that it was
recent
supposed to
discussion
be
that
under,
DOT was
that it
not
was
going to be the sole
yeah, that it was
agency
approved and it was
responsible
going
for
to be under
monitoring.
DOT. In terms of any delineation further than that, I haven't heard, and I was wondering if you had heard anything through
The
the
law
Department
was
of.
written so that the DOT will be the one that writes the rules and supervises the program and does the enforcement.
Okay, well, hopefully
I
they'll
saw a
notify.
headline.
Okay.
I saw a headline that flirted. I think that someone's flirting with the idea of it not being DOT, but that would require new legislation to change that, because the legislation that made it a permanent program set the parent agency of the program as DOT. So that would we'll have to see a new law be proposed. But there are more laws necessary to fully enact the open dining, open restaurants as we currently know it, to not completely as we know it, because they're apparently not, they're not going to have shelters, or they're not looking to do shelters or structures, but there is I guess a possibility that they could change that in the future. There certainly is more legislation coming down the hopper, down the pipe.
Right, and so the tweet
So,
that I posted was more in response to what Patrick's committee worked with.
all right, so that means that everything is status quo until they otherwise. So whatever they were doing before in the past, they're still going to continue to do, and it's going to be under DOT. I have a lot of questions, and maybe
Through 2022, the new program that is being implemented starts in January of 2023. So don't expect any changes, even if the rules are written and we respond as a community board. They would not take effect until 2023.
Yeah, I mean, expect more legislation. Our expectations right now is that it's custodial to make the changes necessary to have what is currently an emergency program to be a permanent program, and all the kind of tweaks that are necessary. But the possibility always exists, and the space exists for some drastic change to happen, because they're opening the book, and when the book is open, someone can tinker. So
I know, and that's
I'm
why
not saying it couldn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm anticipating that, and I'm thinking in terms of the licensing committee and what kind of headaches that's going to
And quality of
present.
life.
That's why I
Exactly.
ask, and
Yeah.
quality. It's going to be okay.
I think, Betty, if I can, in the licensing committee and maybe Pat could reaffirm what I'm going to say, the licensing and the quality of life committee, I think most of the people in the committees were in favor of post like mandates, like post when everything is shortly back to semi-normal, that back to whatever the capacity was before, but having full capacity in the restaurant, and then having the, like, the outdoor dining, which basically is like would be the same as the the street cafes, that we were kind of against, that just getting back to 100% capacity the way it was before, instead of taking up basically the parking spaces and the bike lanes, to increase to have 200% capacity.
And as Lucian just said, this particular time gives a little space for people to be tweaking. So I was just in the Flatiron district, and some of the stuff that they're building over in some of those streets is like incredible. That's not in our district, but I can see where people are
Castles
going
and
ahead and they're
entrances.
going to try to slip through that crack and do whatever they can. So
It's
this
happening
is
in our
good.
district also in certain spots.
Yeah.
Yes, well,
So
I'm going to turn it over to Lucian to speak, but I want you to know that currently the DOT's rules would not allow any enclosed structures. So
No, but Betty,
in
what we're talking
2023.
2023, there will be no, if all things held equal, there will be no structures. There will only be barriers and umbrellas at the max. But to answer Francis's question, or maybe Mitch, what's likely to happen is that the licensing committee will resume reviewing sidewalk cafe style seating, like pre-pandemic, like you did pre-pandemic. There will be hearings that will take place through community boards for what was discussed. Things in the street will be considered revocable consent, and that is revocable consents are currently discussed in the transportation committee. So anything changing that would have to that would be a bigger discussion. But under the current structures, you will get the sidewalk cafe style seating back in licensing, because that program essentially is being reestablished in a very similar way that existed under the Department of Consumer Affairs of that time. But I also want to warn you that your plates are going to be very full in licensing, because probably in 2023 you'll also have to be reviewing dispensaries and on-site consumption for marijuana. So so buckle up.
Where's my crying?
Say, watch
Lucian,
what you wish for.
Lucian, that's already happening in the parkway near where you live.
We have dispensaries in Harlem right now.
No, you know what I'm
legally
talking
operating,
about.
but we have storefronts that are selling marijuana.
No, I'm talking
openly.
about, I was making a,
yeah. Well,
they just opened one on Fulton Street, right across from City MD. Great.
I guess I was talking about the shooting gallery a few blocks from your house. That's what I was.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah.
Well, 110 and Lex is enough. Anyway.
Okay.
So yeah, that's all I got.
Sorry.
To be continued in a bigger way.
Okay. Well, then
Thank you
if that's the case, Betty, should I take on the recording now?
Please do, and we'll consider it finished and get ready to enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
I gotta bounce, but bye everybody.